Hello, Matt. Thank you for joining me.
Man, honor is mine, brother. Thank you for having me.
So I know you're a busy man. You're building many projects at the same time. Also, you got the farm. So I'm very
Right.
grateful that you found the time to talk to me today. And also like the work that you do, I think is very special, right? Like there's not a lot of people that actually talk about the problems and then also do something about them. So I
Mhm.
think that's amazing work you do right there. So thank you for that, first of all.
Thanks, sir.
As also from parent to parent. So I think we
Yes,
need
sir.
more people like you.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Intentionality in parenting is something that we do lack in society. We really do. So,
Yeah,
respect goes both ways, brother. Thank you.
100%. Take me to that moment when you realized that you had to build a parallel system for your kids, or that phase.
Yeah. The the real moment, the real moment was there was a bunch of other moments that led up to it. The real moment was reading "Stop Stealing Dreams" by Seth Godin. The real moment was sitting in a parking lot after a full day of work as a school administrator, reading the entire manifesto in my car and deciding right then and there that my oldest, at that point I had two children, and my oldest was about to go into school the next year. And I decided right then and there she would never go into any sort of conveyor belt program. She would not go anywhere that I did not build. And that was, again, precluded by a bunch of moments. It was precluded by the moments of seeing everything that I was learning in the conveyor belt model and why it was not built for children. It was precluded by me deciding before I ever had kids, partially based on watching this movie with Will Smith, Pursuit of Happiness, partially deciding there in the movie theater I would do anything and everything for my children. And I think a lot of parents have had that thought, they've had that conversation, but I also always say people say what they wish they believed. What they do is what they actually believe. Everybody says, "Oh, I'll do anything for my kids," until it's time to do the work. And then they look for the excuses, then they look for why they can compromise. Well, you just don't understand our situation, right? They're lying to themselves. And I don't lie to myself. I don't lie to anybody else, but I also don't lie to myself. And that's an important distinction to make. So I said, my kids won't go anywhere that I didn't build. And I mean it. So that's when I decided to build.
Powerful. Yeah, because I mean, I've been to public school, I've been to private school, I've been to Waldorf
Yep.
institutions, and
Yep.
none of them are to the standard where I would put my kid in, right?
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
so when I kind of became a father, instantly I was like, okay, down the line I have to think about these topics, right? Like where I'm gonna, how am I gonna school my kids? Am I gonna homeschool them or not, right? And then I
Yep.
came across like what you guys are doing with Apogee Strong, especially, right? And then I also took part in a couple calls, because I was just interested, if it were possible to build one over here in Europe. And so that it just showed me how in depth and like how well thought through the work is that you guys do, right?
Yeah.
It's
Thank you.
super super interesting. And I mean, you're building like I think 100 campuses this year or so.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate that because it is extraordinarily thought through, and not just thought through, it is thought through because of reflection.
Mm,
And that's a key distinction too, right? It's reflection on things that we've already done and seen what is working, seen what is not. And so this is our attempt to make it better. And by the way, we'll miss something on this go around, and then we'll have to get better the next round, right? Like that's it. We're not here to build some sort of infrastructure to pat ourselves and put ourselves in some sort of ivory tower. We're here to adapt and to continuously work and get better. So yeah, we had about 400 applications that came in this year, for people that wanted to launch these campuses around the world. We took about 50, so we're going to launch about 50 in 2024, U.S., Canada, and Australia. Got 50 launching here. We're going to start taking applications again here in April, for the 2025 launches, because we bring everybody through a very specific training. I think we'll do another 100 in 2025. We want to ultimately get, you know, I mean, we don't really necessarily have a target number, but we think within the first 5 years, there's no reason we don't have 1,000 locations.
amazing. So would you say is the system in the US, Canada, and Australia, is it very similar in terms of, the back end?
Yeah, I mean, there's politics are the name of the game in all of them. So that's where the similarity is, right? It's that schooling is a political machine to it's a political means to a political end. So for all of those, yes. And ultimately, we don't even, I don't like to take a look at the external as much. I look at the internal too and go, okay, well, how is a human being designed, and how do we get the most out of the human beings? That's really where it is, right? Is like if we take too long to look at the external and go, we're going to fight this and we're going to fight this, we forget about the kid. Like that's what it's there for. So we actually need to turn that, telescope all the way around, look at the child and go, how do we build the best environment for a human to thrive? That's what we focus on.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, it's just I come from that end because ultimately, when I thought about, okay, is this possible here, right? Then
Yeah.
I grew up in Germany, and I'm like, okay, no way, they will allow
Yeah.
that, right? So that's
Yeah.
why,
Yeah.
that's kind of the
I
the
mean,
basis.
homeschooling's still illegal in
Yeah,
Germany,
yeah, there's
believe
no
it or
chance like the police will pick you up eventually, right? There will be a couple
not.
letters, and then
Yeah.
eventually, yeah, it's the force that will, wipe
Yeah.
you out in some form.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
No
it's
doubt.
super
Scary,
nasty.
man. Yeah,
Yeah,
it
it's
is.
it's uh it's crazy stuff. I mean, especially during COVID, I think. I mean, to me, I was, surprised on that end because, I got a couple nephews, and they were all in school during that time, and they would literally separate the kids, and put them on like single tables, in the winter. Open the windows. They were sitting there with their
Yeah.
jackets, with the mask on, and doing their tests and stuff, right? And like
Yeah.
parents would tolerate that, and I mean,
Yeah.
like
That's
unbelievable, right? Like,
That's so it's such a so you said a word earlier that I love, and the word is standards. What are your standards for your life? Like your life, what you allow to be a part of your life is your standard for yourself. It's your standard for your family. When you allow those things to be your reality, you have set a low standard for your family, and in fact, you're letting somebody else set the standards for your family. So one of the things that Seth Godin, I mentioned him writing that manifesto, but one of the things he said to me that nobody had ever asked me before, and this is I'd already spent years in higher education. I'd spent years as a teacher. I'd spent years as an administrator. Nobody had ever asked this question: what should education be for? Nobody had ever asked me that question. So when he asked me that, I had to stop and think: what should education be for? What should being an educated human produce? And the best answer that I could come up with, I'm open to other people making a better argument, but I can't beat this in my head yet. It's sovereignty. It's not even just freedom, it's sovereignty. It is the ability to do what I want to do with who I want to do it with, when I want to do it for, whatever purpose I want to do that for, as long as I'm not hurting somebody else. That's what education should be for. It's a way to move the needle forward because I think it is the natural default setting of a human being. We want to be educated. We come out wildly curious. We come out on fire. We come out excited about life. We come out wanting to do new things, wanting to try, wanting to grow. I think it's for preserving that. I think education is all about preserving that factory setting. And when you allow other people to set low standards and then you go, okay, I guess that's what I'm doing now, you've just become apathetic to your own growth. Like you've handed the pen over. And I can't get on board with that.
yeah, no way. I mean, every kid kind of starts, with asking questions all the time. Like,
Yes.
doesn't matter. And they
Curious.
ask the same question 10 times until they understand it, right? And then you put them in some sort of a system, right? It doesn't matter if it's a kindergarten or primary school, and all of a sudden they're quiet, right? All of
Yeah.
a sudden they look for distractions. All of a sudden, like the video game is more interesting, right? Like in
Yes.
my case as well, I mean, I was gaming like a shit ton with like 12, 13, 14, like, a couple thousand hours of the same
Sure.
games, and like proper into it. Because, it was the most exciting thing, right? Like in school, I was told to shut up, like stop asking any questions, right? Like, why are you asking these odd questions? Like, why do you want to understand history? Like, history is in that book. Like, can't you
Right.
see that? Yeah, but what I learned, outside of school doesn't add up with what I'm learning here. So I'm allowed to ask questions. No, gave me a bad grade, sent me
That's
out
right.
of the classroom. Right.
That's
So
right.
then you learn that's what kind of gets ingrained into you, right? Like, don't ask any questions, don't think outside the box, right? All these things that make you a bad businessman, for example, in the free world, right? Like it's exactly the opposite.
That's exactly the opposite. It makes you bad at everything.
Yeah.
It makes you bad at everything, right? Like why is my relationship so good with my wife? Because I'm still, even though I've been with her for 18 years, I'm still curious about her. I still ask questions about her. I still pursue her, right? I still experiment with, I mean, I'm not saying experiment like something weird. I'm saying experiment with like, ooh,
Yeah.
what does she like it what if I made her this? What if I did this? How do I think through how to serve her better? My relationship with my wife is great because I don't shut that curiosity off. Makes you bad at everything.
Yeah, true. Yeah, because if you stick to that school thinking, then you will expect her to always tell you everything, right? Like you expect her to always approach you with every problem, but that's not how it works, right? Like especially
That's
with,
not how it works.
if you lead the household, you have to, approach
That's
and
right.
you have to look for the solutions, right?
And I'll assume that I have all the answers, right?
Yeah.
Because in school, answers are a standardized thing, and you get rewarded for just having the answers, right? You don't get rewarded for questions. Life rewards questions.
Mm, yeah, crazy stuff. Yeah, I
Mm.
think, that there's this quote, where is it? Yeah, don't be surprised if you send your kids to Caesar and they
And they
come
come
back
back
as
home.
Romans, right? Like that one. Like
Yeah,
I
that's
think
right.
that's so spot on, right?
Yep. Yep. That's exactly it. But that's how people, and it's the ultimate hypocrisy, but that's how people act. Um, it is it's the ultimate form of cognitive dissonance, and I talk to parents daily, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and this is where I go back to I don't lie to myself, right? Parents will lie to themselves like crazy, and it's a coping mechanism. I think when you lie, lying systemically on a grand scale, when it's a system that's lying to you, it's usually a manipulation technique. When people lie to themselves, it's a coping mechanism, is really what it is. And so I see these parents, these coping mechanisms, and they'll lie to themselves about, well, no, not my school, not my kid's school, not this district, not this. No, here's why it's different. My kid, it doesn't impact. Actually, my kid's doing really well. My kid's thriving in this system. My kids, it allows them to not take a look at what's really going on. People can thrive in a bad system. That doesn't mean you're thriving as a human. It means you're playing a game well. Somebody thrives in a video game. It doesn't mean life is working out. It means you're really good at that video game. People can be really good at school, but the disconnect, the cognitive dissonance is nobody wants to like pay attention to the fact that school and life are not the same games. So you can be really good at the game of school, and it has jack shit to do with being really good in life. The like reverse is also true. You can suck at school and then come out and do life really, really well. Those things are there. So the logical side of me says, why not just spend those formative years protecting the factory setting of curiosity and making that young person really good at life early on? It just makes sense.
Yeah. Or at least like give them the freedom to test stuff out, right? Like I know that that's what was missing for me, right? Like I
Yeah,
was always curious. I wanted to test out all the different kinds of whatever, right? Like doesn't matter if it's, sports or any other subject. Like, but you didn't have the time, right? Like you were pushed through the curriculum. You had to, just learn by heart and then forget about it, right? And didn't matter in the end if you knew it the next year or not, right? Like
that's right.
it's
Just playing a game.
completely brainless.
Yep. Playing a game. But then, so you play that game, and then if you do that for 12 years, think about how good you get at something
Mhm.
after 12 years of doing it.
Right.
So now you've, for 12 years, told the world to tell you what to do. For 12 years, you've put your curiosity to the side. For 12 years, you've been focused on just regurgitating an answer versus trying to figure out a great question. For 12 years, you've been focused outwards, going, what do you want from me? What do you want from me? What do you want from me? Versus looking inward, going, what do I want for me? You've been focusing on handing over your freedom versus that internal sovereignty. So after 12 years, you think you're just going to flip a switch and now all of a sudden you're going to pay? No, that's your habit now. and it sticks with most people the
Mm.
rest of their life.
Yeah, and it's hard to break a habit. That's for
It's
sure.
really hard to break a habit.
Especially because then all of a sudden you're on your own, right? Like you just left that cubicle, right?
Yeah,
And then, everybody goes studying something, right? Like in France, you kind of decide before you finish school, you already decide what you're going to study, and then there's like no gap in between, right? Like you jump in,
yeah,
right? Then you're in business school and you're like 20, then you're doing a
yeah,
master's, you're 21, or
yeah,
a law or whatever, right? Like it's automatic, right? And then you're 23, and then you like for the first time you might have a couple months to think about what you're actually doing. And I know a lot of French people, and
yeah,
like it's difficult,
yeah.
right?
And they're like, wait, who am I?
Yeah,
Who am I now?
yeah,
And that's a hard thing to get around because you won't change. And partially, everybody else has been duped into doing the same thing. So when somebody just goes, you know what, this is not right, I'm going to do something else. That shakes everybody else's self-conscious side where they're like, no, 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 no. Right? It's that whole concept of crabs in a bucket. You got a bunch of crabs trapped in a bucket and one of them's trying to get free. You'll see other crabs be like, no, 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 you can't get free. We're not free. You can't get free. And they'll try to pull the crab down. Right? No, you just stay in here with us. Everybody else. It's the whole concept of the movie The Matrix, right? People fighting to protect what they've always known because they don't want to shatter their own self. They don't want to look at somebody else break free and feel bad about themselves. So they'll try to drag you down to their level.
yeah. They want to see you win, but just not more than them, right? Like
More than them. Right. That's exactly right, man. Yep. That's the pattern.
yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, because like, even just how to break a habit, right? Like that would be something that you could learn over those years, right? Like how do you actually, or how do you implement a habit, right? Like how do you learn a new one, right? Like
That's right.
all these basics, right? Like there's none of that we're taught.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. But that's actually real education. That's something that's what would be called a meta skill,
Yeah.
which is what we focus on. So when I say meta skill, I mean something that always matters and is transferable, right? So it is a concept that always matters. It doesn't change based on technology changing, based on, the world moving forward, based on innovation, based on it always matters. So habits are a part of the human DNA structure. So that's always going to matter. It doesn't matter what AI does. I still have habits that I have for myself, right? So it matters. So it transcends time. So it's going to matter there. And then it's transferable, meaning it is a skill that once I identify it and once I figure out how to manipulate it, it's something that I can take that skill set and I can transfer to other domains as well. So habits are one of those things. It's a meta skill that lasts over time. So why don't we talk to people about, okay, here's how you've developed your habits. Here's how you set up your environment to more easily help you to change those habits, because we don't tell people this. You don't just eliminate a bad habit and have success. You actually have much more success if you replace it, right? You don't eliminate it, you replace it. You literally replace it and make sure your environment is conducive to replacing it the way you want it to be. That's a great skill. That's a great skill to have. It's a great thing to understand. We don't talk about those things, but it's a meta skill that always matters. Those are the things we should be talking about and implementing.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, how do you like, would you say, for example, that is already something for primary school, or is that later on? Yeah.
Sure. I mean, that's you don't have to get super in depth, right? So like you don't have to get into you don't have to get into the fact that when you're creating a habit, you're creating neurological pathways, right? You're creating tracks in the brain. And then if you make the habit of pushing through on something that's weird and confusing and new, your brain actually remembers that. And so now you can go back and do it more efficiently. But also the same is true if you quit, your brain remembers the quitting. And so that's what you're implanting. We don't have to get into the neurological side of things. We don't have to get into that because, nobody, your brain isn't even ready to understand abstract comments like that until you're 12, 13, 14, before your brain's even at that level to be able to understand it. Really, more likely 16, 17. So we don't have to, but we can start the basic side of like good habits, bad habits. What are good habits? What do habits mean? Where do they lead? Like primary ages can still understand the basics So you just set that basic foundation there. What do we do? What do we do every day? And by the way, when we say habits, what are the good habits for humans? That's how we build a family too. My kids don't have to understand intellectually every single thing that we do. They just understand that we do it. And when I say we do it, they see mom and dad doing it too. So they actually believe it's important. They don't see hypocrisy. They don't see dad going, "This is what you should do. I'm going to do this." No, no, no. We do this. Okay, cool. Must be important. Must matter.
Yeah, setting an
Here we
example, right? Like,
setting an example.
yeah,
Yep, 100%.
yeah, that's definitely something that I also learned. I mean, I have a couple nephews, and I've seen a lot throughout the years. So I knew, okay, once I'll be a parent, I have to do this better, and I have to implement this. So
Yeah,
I've kind of had like a little bit of a pre-learning phase there, but
yeah,
surely it's different, when you have your own kids. But
yeah,
let's go back a bit to the the education part, like the because you also talk about like reimagining education, right? Like basically from the ground up. And we just talked
yep,
about habits, and then, starting at like, let's say, 20-30% of understanding in the primary school, and then moving it forward into the older
yep.
levels. Would you say that's kind of the same thing with everything else, like having the basics early on and then building on top of that? And what do you say, okay, like that has nothing, to do with, the early years, we only talk about that later on? Like, how would you structure, or how do you
Yeah,
guys structure that?
yeah. So it's a really good question, and what I hope to articulate here is that um, there has been this concept, and this is why schooling is so dangerous in my mind, because there's a concept where we talk about, hey, look, kids need the basics early so they can build on it. Yes, I agree, but Socrates said the beginning of wisdom is the definition of terms, right? So let's define basics. School defines basics as academic basics. We define basics as meta skill basics. At 5 years old, should children understand that responsibility is a good thing? Yeah. Can they understand that good habits are what leads to success? Can we talk about those things? Yep. Can we tell them what good habits look like? Yeah. Can we have them understand that communication like try to understand how to communicate what you're thinking and what you're feeling, and how to listen to somebody else, and how to shake hands, and how to look? Can we understand all? Yeah, 100%. These are all basic things that we can show them. Does every child need to be able to read at 5? No, that's not the basic we're talking about, right? They don't. Some children will be able to learn to read at 5 and will want to. Some won't be ready yet. Both of those are okay. We still need to expose them to reading. We still need to but the forcing of academic, structure too early in the name of building a foundation is a ruse. It's wrong. So yes, foundations matter, but what you build those foundations out of matter just as much.
Yeah, it's a lot of, how is the parent actually, you know, structured mentally, I would say as well. I've
Yeah,
seen a lot
totally.
of like my friends back in the day where, the mother had to kind of, push her ego into something that,
Yeah,
the guy had to learn, or the boy had to learn at an early age. And then there was a trainer there every day, may it be
yeah,
tennis or, math or whatever, because they were lacking
yeah,
that skill back in the day, and they wanted to achieve that. And now the child has to achieve it. And
yeah,
then,
yeah, yeah.
get all these like weird, like compulsory kind of behaviors come out of that later on, just because, the parents, they were trying to heal their trauma with the
Right,
children, like,
right.
right.
Yep, that's exactly it. They're trying to mold. That happens a lot. Trying to mold what they wish they were. What they wish they had been. They're trying to soothe their own inner demon versus finding out who this young child is, and worrying about the environment kind of stuff. That's really the game, is always the environment. So it's the game at home, it's the game on a campus, it's the environment. That's what you're really always cultivating as an educator, as a parent who is a primary educator. It's always the environment, so that you can cultivate whatever flower that is that you're growing. And I use that garden example because I think people understand it when I use that example. to grow a specific type of plant, grow a specific type of flower, a specific type of vegetable, you don't do anything other than plant the seed to the seed itself. You don't have to yell at it. You don't have to, like scream at it. And you never ever hope that that cucumber you planted is going to grow up to be a sunflower. You don't think that. There's no part of you that's like, oh, I just planted cucumbers, man, but I hope it turns out as a pepper. Like, what? You'd be a crazy person. But we do that with our kids where it's like, okay, I'm going to make them me. No, you're not. Why? You're going to ruin it if you try to make it you. So what do? You plant it and you worry about the environment. You worry about the environment. You worry about the water that's coming in, whether you're providing the water or whether water is being provided from rain, from an outside source. You just pay attention to the water so that there's not too much, there's not too little. You want to try to get it as close to just right as possible. You pay attention to the soil. You want the soil to be just right. You pay attention to the sun. You don't want too much. You don't want not enough. You pay attention to what other plants are around that plant. There are certain plants that choke out the life of other plants and don't allow them to grow. So you pay attention to what other plants are in the air. You become a master at environment. And if you do all the environmental things right, well, guess what that seed's going to do? It's going to grow to be the most perfect version of itself as it can. That's what we do for our kids. The minute we try to make it a different kind of plant, or we put it next to plants that are naturally going to choke it out, or we drown it in something that's even supposed to be good, like water, we screw it up.
Yeah. We have to watch out for those invasive plants a lot.
A lot. There's a lot of them.
Yeah. Yeah. We're building a permaculture farm, and we kind of started with the project, during COVID. And it's crazy how the parallels, are between nature and children and family, right?
Yes, sir.
And
yes, sir.
When did you start with your farm? Was that?
What's funny is we showed up to this farm 2 years ago to the date. So you and I are recording this on February 15th, 2024. We showed up at our farm February 15th, 2022. Yep. So we had moved, kind of house to house. We had always we were in California, which is not an easy place to get land. And we had moved, home to home, ultimately knowing that we wanted to be able to again, sovereignty, right? We wanted to be able to take care of ourselves and learn what that meant. My wife and I grew up as city kids. We didn't have any of that experience. So we ultimately landed in a small ranch, in California, and we were really excited that we had the small ranch. And so we started small, but then we found this farm. It was, 2,000 miles away from where home was, but it was a farm that had already been extraordinarily well built. The owners were saying they would stay to train people on how to do everything that was here.
Amazing.
Animal garden, the fencing, the wells, the underground piping, all of it. And we jumped.
No brainer.
Well, did you guys take a class? The class was called Do It. That was it. And we're learning every day. But as we speak right now, we've got, my family's out delivering goats this week. We got goat babies being born. So we got little goats running around everywhere. In the process of the goats, we had a tree fall. We had electric fence go down. So we had to, lumberjack some stuff, and we got to put electric fencing back together. And we got to put we just learned by doing it.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, for me, it was kind of similar. I actually bought the first lot 3 years ago, more or less. Nice. Yeah, and because I was living in the middle of the city, and opening the window in the morning, I saw the little kids running to school with their mask on, looking at their phone. I'm like, okay, fuck this. I'm not gonna do this anymore. So then I just jumped into it. But unfortunately, there was no one that was attending the place before. So I'm literally learning from scratch, all of
awesome.
it.
Good. Yeah. That's it. That's the way to go. Good for you, man. Most people aren't brave enough to do it. And I don't just mean brave enough to go get a farm. I mean, most people aren't brave enough to actually learn something from scratch, to actually go try, to actually go do it, to actually go take time to do something that matters.
Yeah, because it's
Most people aren't,
difficult. It's difficult.
because it's hard.
It's not easy.
That's right. It takes time.
And you don't get the immediate result, right? That's also what we're taught in school, right? Like write the
Right.
test, get the result, get a pat on
Yep.
the back or not, right?
Yep. That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly it.
Let's jump back into the more serious stuff, like the comparison between school and prison. You also talked
Yeah.
about that one.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Like, look at the systems that are in place. We were talking, you and I were talking earlier about the game of life versus the game of school. They're not the same game, right? To it'd be crazy to take a child and go, okay, I want you to be a really, really good football player. So I'm going to take 12 years and teach you how to play basketball. Well, some of that transfers, I guess, because footwork matters. Maybe you'd be in decent shape. There's a ball, there's teammates. So, yeah, it's similar enough. But you take 12 intensive years of basketball training, and then you go, okay, here's your pads. Somebody's going to come at you and try to crush you. The rules are all completely different number of people, different plays, different. You'd be like, hey, I would have been better off taking those 12 years and learning how to play the game that I'm expected to play right now. Like, you'd be kind of pissed. So I'm looking at systems in that way, right? So the closest system to what we do in school, you get to talk when you're told to talk. You get to eat when you're told to eat. You get served crap food. You get bussed there on this big giant crappy bus. You go in there. Anybody that's there that works there is your authority, no matter what. Whether you like what you're doing or you're not, like, it doesn't matter. You're going to get told what to do, when to do it. You need to be apathetic. We control your life. And so because you don't have a voice, you're also going to band together probably with other people during rec time or recess. And you're going to go, okay, who are my people? You're my people. I definitely don't talk to them because they're not my people. But I definitely want some sort of voice and power. So I'm going to go ahead and bully this group over here because that gives me at least a voice, because I don't have a voice while we're in the system, and so, yeah, the parallels to prison are uncanny. And it's about as close as I can find in society to a system that actually matches the system that the kids are in.
Yeah.
Closest thing I can find.
Yeah, what's crazy is when, in my 20s, in my early 20s, I would always talk about these topics and I would try to change people's minds, right? Like, and then
Yeah.
you get older and you just learn that it's impossible, right? So, but like the parallels, you can see them, right? Like the rooms look the same, the lights are the same, and then,
Building design is the same.
yeah,
Sometimes the uniforms are damn near the same. Yeah, 100%.
yeah, systemic behavioral management, right?
Well, that's what school is built for.
Yeah.
School is a behavior management system. That's what it was built for. And the founders of our system weren't exactly even shy about saying that. Like,
It's all
we
out
want a
there.
nation. Yeah, it's all out there. We want a nation of workers, not a nation of thinkers. Like,
Exactly.
it's all there. So that's what it is. It's systemic behavior management, large scale behavior management. And you wonder if it's work. People are like, school's broken. No, look at society. Society is, for the most part, a very well behaved group of slaves. Seems like it's working fine to me.
No, it works perfectly well. Like
Perfectly well. Doing exactly what it's designed
yeah,
to do. It's not
100%.
educating.
No, because
It's
people
not
always say it's broken, and people say politics is broken, and people say,
medical
like,
system's broken. No, it's
yeah,
working.
and these people that are in politics or that supposedly have anything to decide, they are, especially now, they're sick, they're broken. I'm like, no, that's all on purpose. That's exactly
Right.
how it's supposed to be.
Exactly right.
Yeah. How do you go about, like building like these campuses and stuff like that? Like, are these kind of topics, important to you to talk about with parents and stuff, or is that, would you say you just cover the basics and
No, we're important. So that's part of the filtering mechanism, right? It's because we're very honest about what we're doing, and we're very honest about why. So the first stages of this are more about inviting. We are not going to be convincing. So I talk to the affiliate owners. I will let them know if you're having to convince somebody the difference between school and real education, they are not your people right now. They might get there, but they're not your people. there are enough people out there who understand it. There are. And so if we build it and invite, the right people will find their way. And then it's going to be the stories and the changes that happen afterwards that are going to get more and more people to come on board, right? So I look at it like CrossFit is an example that I like to use. I don't care whether somebody likes CrossFit or doesn't like CrossFit. I don't care. The point is, they came out and they started doing something radically different in the fitness space, and they started doing it from a group mentality. But they started doing something that were workouts that really not a lot of people were doing workouts like that. They weren't doing the specific movements. They certainly weren't doing it by gamifying it, putting the intensity around it, putting the team component to like nobody was doing that. And people went, that's nuts. Except for the people that were like, yeah, this is how it should be, I think. And so then they jumped on board, and then transformation started taking place. And then the stories of the transformations got more and more people to be like, I want that kind of transformation. I just do. I wouldn't have believed it until I saw what you were doing. And now it's like, man, I actually kind of want that. Right now, does that mean everybody in the world is doing CrossFit? No, it does not mean that. It doesn't mean everybody loves it. Doesn't mean everybody thinks it's a good idea. But it got enough of a movement, and they made enough positive change that not only did people, as the company's still doing well, some of your old school gyms are implementing CrossFit style classes. And you're seeing that kind of like circuit training and thing make a comeback. And so it's changing things. Even if it's not directly, it's indirectly changing a lot. It's the same thing for us. We want to invite the people that get it now. And then the stories will tell themselves. And that'll inherently start pushing back far more and far quicker than if we were to just stand outside and just go, this isn't cool. No, you build something that's a better idea. People will notice.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the concept of like just pointing a finger and actually doing something about it, right? What I mentioned in the beginning.
Yep.
It's like a lot of people talk about what's wrong, but they don't take a leap of faith and actually build something that's better or more interesting. Yeah.
That's right. Because it's hard.
Yeah, because they need to cut back on their, their plan of buying a new car next year.
Right. Right. People don't like taking a look at that. Or they've got, they only have a certain amount of hours. There's only a certain amount of hours in the day, Cool. I've got the same amount. And so does anybody else. So what are you doing with those hours? You spend a lot of your time getting really good at things that don't matter. I don't waste a minute of my time, and I'm willing to put years in of every day being some of it work, some of it family, and then the rest of it, there is no relaxation. It's just more work building out the new thing. There is no vacation. There is no entertainment. There is none. I don't compromise at all until I get built what I want built. That's the difference.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, the work that you have to put in to build something great, right, from scratch especially, is not for everyone. I mean, that's for sure. I mean, just like a little project like mine, right? Like with the farm. I mean, just to get to where I am right now, it took 3 years, and I haven't even started, properly.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, it's a 1% thing. There's this great quote by Heraclitus, and I've seen this percentage, I really think, play out in every arena. Heraclitus mentioned it around war, but it really is a microcosm or an example for any other thing. He says, out of every 100 men, 90 shouldn't be there. 9 are it's like 9 are the warriors, and 1 will bring them all back. It's something in that regard, basically saying there's only 1% that will lead. There's another 9% that are going to be pretty solid, and they'll follow good leaders. But the rest of that 90% are basically just they're cannon fodder. And I've seen that play out in society. You got 1% that are going to go build everything. People say, well, that's not fair that the 1%. Well, no, the 1% are the ones that are willing to do the work. It's not fair until you realize there's an infinite number of games to play. And so what we're referring to is 1% who are deciding what game they want to play, and they're going to build that game. That's the 1%. And then you've got, again, the other the rest of that top 10% that are going to go, yep, that makes sense. Let me go help, and let's go rock and roll. That's true for, I think, almost anything.
Yeah. it's that overnight success, right? And all the
That's
failure
right.
is not
That's right.
seen, all the stuff that happened in the dark.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly right. For the
yeah,
years ahead of time.
true,
Yep.
true. Like for all the parents that that don't have the possibility to join one of these campuses, or
Yeah.
you know like for whatever reason, like what do you think are some actionable steps, like
Yeah.
to make the
Uh,
life of the children and theirs a bit better?
yeah. I mean, it's a great question. So there's a million answers to that, all different layers and different levels of responsibility and different time frames, right? So people don't have a campus like this near them, partner with us and build one. Like I get those messages all day long too. Right before you and I got on, I had a call and somebody's like, "Hey, I want to see if I can try to convince you to put a campus in Colorado Springs." And I said, "No, you don't need to convince us to put a campus anywhere. We're not picking locations. We're partnering with people who want to build this. So if you're in Colorado Springs, pick up the reins.
Yeah,
Let's go. Let's go. We'll help you. You're gonna have to take the lead. We're not picking places, we're picking people. So, there's that option. There's the option of obviously of home educating. I make a difference. Uh, I intentionally say not homeschooling. Schooling is just, oh, what did school do? Let's recreate it here at the house. That's not what we're doing. Home education is always an option, and we have programs to show parents how to do that well too. But for the parents who are like, hey, we don't have a campus here. We're not in a situation right now to home educate. It's those parents that are the majority. I think they're the 90%, and that's who I really want to speak to because first, take a look realistically at what we've been talking about this whole time. Being honest with yourself. Can you really not do it, or do you not want to do it? And you're making excuses as to why you don't want to take care of your kid that way. Can you cut back? Do you need that new car? Do you need that big of a house? Do you need that? Do you really need two incomes? Do you really need like take an honest look? And again, I don't know your answer, but are you looking at your actual answer? And then the rest of it starts with being an example. If you want a curious child, be a curious adult. If you want a child who's healthy, be a healthy adult. Right? If you want a child who's not distracted, eliminate the distractions from the house. I can't get my kid to stop playing video games. Who bought him the system?
yeah,
Who's put it? What are you talking about? Get it out
yeah,
of the freaking house.
yeah. He has to
Like
have it because everybody else has it.
that's
Like,
yeah. So it's the majority of changes are actually they're not necessarily ever easy, but they're almost always so simple
mm,
because your kids will do what you do before they do what you say. So what are you making normal? Like what's the baseline for normal in your house? Normal can look like we all get up, we're excited to see each other, we have breakfast together. It can look like we're all excited and know each other's schedule for the day, and we're all, super positive and reinforcing the other person and trying to help that person and checking in with them and how did it go and what do you want to do better and how do I make it better for you and what kind of responsibilities can we all take on and who's ready to take on more responsibility. Like normal can actually look like that. You just have to decide that that's what normal looks like for your family.
yeah, yeah.
Decision.
I think sometimes even if you have that intention, but then you still give your kid away, to a government institution for the most important hours of the day, it's still not going to work out.
No, it's not.
Yeah,
It's not. It's like saying, I had a parent that I talked to last week, great guy. But he says, okay, he says, yeah, I'm going to try the virtual program for the young men. I'm going to try that. And it's like, but he's having a really hard time actually getting the work done. He's going to school all day. He's doing all that stuff there. And I've told him like, that's just the game. Like none of that stuff matters as much, but just play the game. So he's got his school and he comes home and he's got like 2-3 hours of this homework. But then it's like, he doesn't want to do, the stuff that's actually going to help him and build stuff out. I'm like, cool, man. So you're essentially telling him, hey, here's who I want you to marry. I want you to marry this woman right here because this is going to work out well. But you're going to spend 5 days a week, 10 hours a day with your old girlfriend. And you're really going to pour all your energy into that relationship with your old girlfriend. And you think you're going to come back and be like, now I'm going to really cultivate this relationship with my wife? It's ridiculous. But it's what we're trying to do, sending our kids to school and then go, I'll educate them outside of that. I mean, you will a little because you're inherently the educator that matters. But part of what you're educating them on is waste a lot of your time. It's actually okay to do it. Like that's what you're telling. That's your primary message is that you should go waste your time and be apathetic. That's your primary message because that's what you're sending them to.
Yeah, focus on meaningless stuff because
Yep.
you have to.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's a nice segue actually into, the patterns that you probably see with, parents and kids that let's focus on the positive, right? Like and kids that actually excel, right? What do you think is like a good age to talk about here? Like what's your, is it like 16, 17, 18? Is that a good
To
age
talk about what?
to talk about, like where you can actually, recognize patterns with, their parents and how how the parents actually are and how that affects them, right? So let's say, a kid that actually developed, well, is happy, right, has like a
Yeah.
purpose, all that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
what are the patterns that you see with the parents, in the front end?
Got it. So the patterns that we see on the front end for kids that end up ultimately being like that. So it's exactly what we were talking about earlier with the environment.
Yeah.
So the parent is a massive part of that environment. So what does a good parent do? A good parent is continuously pushing his or herself forward. A good parent refuses to compromise. A good parent keeps distractions away. A good parent cultivates a phenomenal environment with the right people. We talk about that concept. I think it was Covey who's like, the product of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? We all say, yeah, that's right, and we agree, and it is right, but then we don't actually cultivate it. Well, a good parent does. A good parent goes, these are the people we're going to spend time with, and here's why. These are the people that we're just not going to have in our lives, and here's why. All right, they're going to eliminate the distractions. They're physically active. They're healthy. Like they're doing all of these things because that is the baseline for normal, and it doesn't have to get a ton more complicated than that. I asked a guy the other day. I was on a show, and he's like, I don't know. He's like, tell me about like, I just can't get into the fact that I'm the primary educator. I said, okay, well, where did you send your kid to learn to walk? Like, I didn't send him anywhere to learn to walk. No, you didn't. He's going to walk because he's watching you walk. And then when he fell, what'd you do? You cheered on the failure. You cheered it on because he fell on his butt. You cheered on the failure. So you were an example. You cheered on the failure because you knew he was trying. It meant he was trying. And you knew that if he kept trying, he was going to get it. So you cheered on that. It was normal to walk in the house. It's normal to do that. And you're going to cheer them on until they get there. Welcome to the microcosm for everything else. What's normal in the house? What's normal as far as what we do? And let me cheer on the failures until you get it right. And it's always a we do in those families. The kids that grow up that well, it's a we do in the family. There's no hypocrisy there. There is no do as I say, not as I do. It is a we do. We're all on a mission. Right? Those parents speak life into that young person. Those parents set the bar high. They expect responsibility early. They're the ones that when the kids are 5 and they say, "Can I help you cook dinner?" They say, "Yes, absolutely you can." Because they want to cultivate that work ethic. They want to cultivate that relationship. And so they do. They front load
Hmm.
relationship and responsibilities because it makes it easier after. People say, oh, like my oldest daughter just turned 13. Oh, now you have a teenager. What are you going to do? You know how teenage girls are. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cultivate a really good relationship with her 12 years ago.
Hmm.
And every year throughout that. And so, no, I've got zero worries about my 13-year-old because I know her really well and I have a great relationship with her. And she's a killer. And she's been stacked with responsibility for years. She's been stacked with opportunity for years. She's been given the opportunity to fail and grow from it, and she's had support for years. She's watched parents who don't compromise on their own ideals, so she doesn't compromise on hers. We've had deep conversations around the world around us and how most people do. Good parents also point out bad patterns, right? They'll cultivate good patterns in their own home and they won't compromise on those. And then they'll point out the bad patterns because kids will get it. We'll go, look, see how that family kind of does this? That's kind of why they're dealing with this. Doesn't mean bad things won't happen to us. It just means we don't have to be the root of those, right?
Yeah.
But look at what they've chosen. So they've chosen that, and that's what's happened. She understands those things, so she makes good choices because she wants to.
Yeah, because it's
Those,
because you discuss stuff, right? Like I've had
all the time.
yeah, I've had plenty of friends like in my youth where, you know, the dad was always gone. I mean, my dad was fairly
Yep.
present, but he was working a lot as well. But
Yep.
we always, you know, discussed everything. Like there was
Yep.
always discussions on the, you know, at the table at dinner or lunch or whatever.
So, man,
And
that matters so much.
right, like I think that's the basis of everything, because like
It is.
how you gonna talk about anything if you're not used to it, right?
That's it. Those conversations matter. People ask, especially the home educated families as they come in and we start help walking them through. They're like, okay, what's the most important thing? Well, the most important thing really is having great conversations. And one of the best places to start having great conversations, reading is great. I think reading is phenomenal. And even if that starts with reading to them and making it fun, making it exciting, and then having great conversations around the concepts and the topics and what would you have done if, those are the ways to go. Like you make reading exciting, you put them in the scenario, they get reps of having to make hard decisions and having, deeper thoughts. And then as they get older, they can move on from just talking about it to writing about it and organizing their thoughts about it, and they gain the ability to think clearly through their writing. But that doesn't have to happen until they're later. But you set the foundation of great conversations.
Yeah, yeah. I think reading to them is so powerful.
Very so,
It's
very
so
much so.
powerful. Even if stuff that they don't understand, you know, for example, my son, he already speaks 3 languages, right? So, you know,
Yeah,
we read to them like in all 3 languages, and you know,
yeah,
sometimes we pick out a book that's maybe a little bit too difficult for him, but you know, he asks, "What's that word? What does that mean?" Right? Or sometimes he doesn't even ask anything and he falls asleep, right? So,
yeah,
it's like a supercomputer. You just feed it with
yeah.
positive stuff, and you know, something good will come out of it.
Very much so. I
Yeah,
mean, it really is that, including, again, what's the habit that's being built here? The habit is reading is important, so I'm going to read. And hey, it's actually pretty fun. Like that's the thing. We killed a lot. That's what academic reading in schools is actually designed to do, is to kill the love of reading.
yeah.
When we do it like that, reading becomes something awesome. And then when he sees mom and dad reading all the time, he's like, okay, reading is important. I see that it's important. We do it together. It's really fun. We have great conversations because of it. Man, you've set them up for success that way.
Yeah, it's so true. Like academia kills the desire to read. I mean, I was devouring books when I was like, you know, 10 to 14, and then I stopped all of a sudden. Like all of us,
Yep.
you know, when those heavy academic
Yeah.
books came in, economics,
Yeah.
all that crap, right? Then I stopped reading all the
Yeah.
fiction, I stopped reading all the novels.
Yep. Yep. You start equating learning with textbooks.
Yeah.
And so then it makes you think you hate learning
Yeah, I felt
when learning
disgusted.
is,
Yeah.
yeah, of course. So it just most people don't get out of it. So I'm glad you did.
Amazing, man. What do you want to lead people to when they want to find you?
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Head to apogeestrong.com. We've got the documentary is up there now. We're gonna keep updating it with all the school locations, with all the different, programs that we have that are designed to stand alone or come together as a full comprehensive thing for families. Apogeestrong.com is the way to go. If somebody's on social, you can check us out at Apogee Program or follow me on my name if you're so inclined. But apogeestrong.com is the way to go.
Perfect. All right. Thank you,
Yep.
brother. It was a good talk.
Yeah. Honors mine.
Cheers, man.